Hey guys, Christy Arnett here for Card Player TV, and today I've got Jason Mercier in the house today to talk strategy. Thanks so much for coming.
No problem.
So earlier we were talking about what your edge is playing tournaments, and you said that one of your strongest points is your ability to adjust to different players. So when you're sitting down at a tournament, do you basically try and profile each player to see how they're going to play?
Yes. I mean, when I sit down at a tournament, you know, I try to look at each player, recognize if I played against them before, what their tendencies are, you know, how aggressive they are or passive. You know, if a guy's an old guy who doesn't really play with his chips very well, usually he's very tight, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, just kind of make adjustments to the players that are at the table. Like Carter Gill was at my table today, and he was on my right, so he was opening a lot of pots, and I 3-bet him like 6 times out of the first 8 times he opened. So, you just have to make adjustments. That's one of the things that I think that I do well.
Okay. Do you put them in categories like weak tight or loose aggressive, stuff like that? And then
Not really. I mean, I mostly just know what they're capable of, or try to know what they're capable of, and know, you know, what ranges they're going to be on, stuff like that.
Okay.
Not really, you know, specifically weak tight or tight aggressive and stuff like that.
All right. Well, let's say you're playing against a player who's super tight, and you have a big hand against them. Would you play your hand slower against that kind of player?
You mean like a bigger hand pre-flop or a bigger hand on the flop?
Pre-flop.
Not really. I mean, I like to raise pre-flop no matter what. I don't really get cute pre-flop very much. So a lot of times I'm just going to put pressure, and then if they decide to play their hand, then you can kind of know that because they're tight, they're going to have a, you know, a decent pair, or like, you know, ace queen type hand. So.
Okay. What, like if a tight player raises into you, and you're maybe last to act, would you re-raise a tight player with like aces or kings pre-flop?
Oh yeah, of course. Especially it depends on the table dynamic. I mean, if I've been you know, re-raising a lot of pots, then of course I'm going to re-raise, because then I want to get it all in pre-flop. I mean, depending on the situation. If I have aces, then obviously I want to get it all in pre-flop. But yeah, I want to get action and get more into the pot pre, usually, if I'm being aggressive. So.
What are some things you pay attention to when knowing when to adjust to different players? Is part of that knowing when someone's tilting, when someone is playing tight, protecting their stack, or what kind of things do you look for?
Well, when I say making adjustments, I'm more referring to the way that I'm playing the table. Like at the final table, or final 2 tables in San Remo, I was being fairly aggressive up until that point, and when I showed up at the same table as Dario Minieri and Wes Menlo, they were very aggressive, more aggressive than I was. So I really completely changed my image and started to develop a tight image so that I could then make plays at them that would get respect. Because if I'm opening almost as much as they are, they're just going to 3-bet me every time.
Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned Carter Gill and adjusting to him. Was there any hands that you can think of that you can
Maybe the one that he knocked me out with? Yeah, I mean, I had picked up some decent hands against him when he was opening, and you know, basically I had a very aggressive image at the table, and almost as if I was like playing after him, you know, trying to play at him. So I figured he was going to play back at me fairly soon, you know, and he limped on the hijack for 400 chips, and I made it 1900 on the cutoff with I had pocket aces. So and I'm about 110,000 deep, and he has me covered. Comes around to him and he flats, and flop comes ace queen 6 with 2 spades. He checks. I bet 2,900. He calls pretty quickly, and the turn comes a red 9, and he checks again. You know, in a pot against like another player, I may check behind there, but I mean, I was pretty sure he was on some sort of draw, or maybe even had like ace jack, ace 10, and was just planning on calling me down the whole way. So I figured it was definitely the best move to bet there. And if he had pocket sixes or something, then
You want to get value.
yeah, I want to get it in there, obviously with the nuts on the turn. And so I bet 7,700, and he took a little while and then called. And the river came a red king, which means that I no longer have the nuts. Jack 10 is the nuts, but I have the second nuts. And he checks. And I decided to bet to try to get value out of my hand, and I made it 21,500. And he took about 8 to 10 seconds, and then threw in 4 25K chips like that. Make it 100,000 to put pressure on me to call off the rest
You're
of my
like,
chips.
really? Jack 10, really?
Exactly. That's basically what I said. I was like, you really have Jack 10, buddy. I was like, Jack 10 of spades makes sense, but I don't know. So I thought about it, and I mean, I know that he is capable of making a bluff like that with maybe 10-9 of spades, or Jack 8 of spades, Jack 9 of spades, because he has. It's almost like an Omaha play because he has a blocker to the nut hand. You know what I mean? So I took like 3 minutes and decided to call, and he had Jack 10, 1 spade. He had the 10 of spades, and yeah. So that's what happened to me.
Well, it seems like the way you break down the hand, you really pegged your man, except for, you know, the river play, and obviously you even thought that he might have the nuts, but at that point it's kind of like.
Well, I mean, my hand is almost the same as like a pair of kings there, like King Jack or King 10, because when he shoves the river, he either has Jack 10 or he has nothing. There's no way even if he had a set of kings there, he's not shoving.
Right.
Because he would just check call, because my line makes no sense like for me to call off unless I have Jack 10. So he's really either on a busted flush draw with some sort of blocker, if you will, to the nuts, or he has Jack 10. So looking back, I mean, I think it's the wrong call, because I still would have 65,000 chips, and the blinds are 2-4. So, I mean, I did kind of a similar play in Niagara Falls where I called a 5-bet shove from an old guy with kings like early in the tournament I was so sure that he had aces. I mean, it was very similar, and you know, kind of upset about both of those plays, but.
Well, did part of you calling, was that in any old way? Because when you adjust your play to other players, you also have to keep in mind your image at the table. And if you're playing super aggressive, you know maybe people are trying to bluff you lighter or shoving you lighter. Does that maybe have any part of your decisions?
I think sometimes it does, but in that particular hand, I don't really think that if he decided to make that move that he would be trying to play back me. I think that if he tried to make that move, he was thinking, or if he was making that move, he would be thinking that I'm capable of laying down top set there. You know what I mean? And would be able to put him on Jack 10. Because you're not going to do that to somebody who you don't know is capable of making that fold. So that's another reason why I called, was because I thought that I know that he knows that I'm capable of laying it down, and I really leveled myself, and I don't know. I mean, I'd rather lose an all-in pre-flop where I have the best hand than call off on the river when I'd still be in the tournament with a lot of chips. So this hurts a little worse than normal.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what do you think the biggest mistake is that players make when adjusting to people's play? Like maybe it's like not paying attention to certain things, or.
Yeah, I mean that happens a lot. I think guys aren't really aware of how much people are opening and how aggressive people are being pre-flop and stuff like that. You know, I mean, I've seen where you know, good players decide to stack off pre when I just know that the guy's only moving in there with aces or kings, and they call off with jacks or tens, you know, or something like that. And I'm sitting there thinking like, how do you justify that call? Like, knowing the player, I know the player won't shove ace king. Like that type of situation where people are just like, where they just think that someone is capable of that when they're really not. So I don't know.
Definitely have to be.
It's a very advanced game.
It is. It's like, I know that you know that I'm capable of this, and you know that it's good. But there's a lot of things to pay attention to, and I appreciate you coming by to talk about it.
No problem. I just would rather play against bad players, so I don't have to think about it.
All right. You can play against me later.
Okay.
Chris Dearnett with Jason Mercier for Card Player TV.